This is Peter van Egmond, that's pronounced in Dutch. I've been in EPM for about 20 years in different roles. In the beginning, mostly implementation and in the role of configuring and building the solutions for clients. And lately, over the last years, more and more in the role of project manager. And for inlumi, we are developing new solutions for our clients, new offerings, of which services for IFRS 16 is one. I'm trying to go to the next slide, but there I am. The agenda for this afternoon. I first want to go through, quickly go through the regulation for IFRS 16. Just to recap, as I'm not entirely sure if everybody knows all, but it's good to set the scene. Then I wish to tell something about how I see the process with a couple of pictures and where we come in. Some considerations next. What to take into account when taking on a project for the implementation of IFRS 16, and then especially implementing a tool. I wish to highlight the vendors that we work with and what they do with their solution, just very brief. And then last but not least, I wish to explain what we have done in Oracle HFM, building an accelerator for the implementation of IFRS 16. IFRS 16. The regulation is coming from the IASB. It's about lease contracts, and it should be effective by the 1st of January 2019. I'm not going into all the details, but of course it can be found off the website of IFRS. Lease contracts that should be taken into account, more than 12 months. Besides that, it should be have a value of more than 5K. It should be recognized on the balance sheet and as well in the P&L. This is in a bit more detail. On the P&L, in depreciation and in interest. As we said, it should be a long-term lease, more than 12 months. A service contract is not a lease, no short-term and no low-value assets. So I understood that some clients also try not to put leases on, like copying machines, printers, because when you have a lot of offices, that can be a lot as well. The basic effects on reporting is that there's quite an increase in lease assets and financial liabilities, and there will be an effect on all key financial metrics that are being derived from the assets and the liabilities. How do we look at that? Because we, as inlumi, we do EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, but IFRS 16 is not just about EPM. There's a bit more, and solutions can be found in different ways. Basically, the way we look at it is, you could have, when we look at the picture on the left side, you could solve and having your IFRS 16 calculations in ERP, in your general ledger. I'm quite sure, well, I know that Oracle and probably also SAP have an IFRS 16 module linked to their linked as a part of their ERP system. From there, the calculations can generate the postings that are needed for reporting, which would go to EPM. I'm still on the left side of the picture of the slide, or would go to separate reporting just for IFRS 16. There could be standalone systems as well, and that's the right picture on this slide. There could be a non-EPM or non-ERP vendors that have IFRS 16 as a solution, as a standalone solution, and from there the postings would be pushed back to the general ledger, pushed to EPM or other reporting tools. But what we are looking at as inlumi, and quite a lot of our clients, is looking at a solution for IFRS 16 with their EPM tool or with a second EPM tool. And the question is, what do they offer? What do the vendors do, and what do we do as inlumi? Basically, you could have a separate application, or you could build it in the application that you already have, generate the postings and push them back to the general ledger and do other reporting necessary for your close. Thinking of such a tool, there are a few considerations. I will not read them out loud, but one could be, when you already have a system, you might not want to buy a separate system for each and every regulation. So you might want to do it in a system that you already use. Especially for the multinational companies, and the bigger companies might have subsidiaries that use different systems for their ledger. So in that case, it would not always be the best solution to use your ERP system for IFRS 16 reporting. If you have already a system, then maybe you could tweak that, you could build it in there, but it depends on the flexibility. And it depends on your plans for the future, because you probably don't want to implement something now and have something else the next year. There's also a thing about cost. It depends on the number of users, it depends on the number of contracts, the diversity of the contracts, and how you wish to integrate and how you wish to update all the details for the contracts. I wish to highlight the vendors that we work with, just very briefly to give you an overview. Without preference, I try to be factual. It's no qualitative or quantitative comparison, no in-depth assessment, and the thing is, there are different needs, and different needs require different solutions. As inlumi, we work with Oracle, we work with OneStream, and we work with Tagetic. And they all offer a solution for IFRS 16. While when we start from the left, recently Oracle has been building a starter kit for in FCCS, that is basically the cloud solution for consolidation. When we look at OneStream, they are more into offering tools to include regulatory reporting like IFRS 9, IFRS 16, 15, and 17 into the same application as the consolidation is running, or the same consolidation, same application as budgeting and planning. While we look at Tagetic, then Tagetic more offers a ready-to-use solution out of the box. So each of them have a different way of looking at the solution. While Tagetic with the out of the box solution is might need the least configuration, but it has to be said that for all three and for every solution that you would choose, integration is the most important thing, because that might take the most time. So that's basically about getting all the details for all the lease contracts in the system which you want to use for IFRS 16 reporting. For a decision, a license structure might have impact. The number of users you have, maturity of the product, the effort it takes to implement, the functionality, of course, but also what do you have already in-house. And if you have, let's say, if you're working with OneStream, you probably do not want to look at, you don't want to look at Oracle and to have two different systems and two license structures and two different vendors you have to deal with. What we have done as inlumi, as we have quite some clients that use Oracle HFM, because that's where we came from. Well, recently we have done quite some work with both OneStream and Tagetic as well, but we got the question from quite some clients of ours whether they could do IFRS 16 within HFM. So in the first quarter of this year, at the end of the first quarter of this year, we have been starting to build an accelerator, and currently we are in progress of implementing this solution at 5 clients of ours. It's using the basic components of HFM, and that would not surprise you. It would be about the data model. It would be about forms, and that would be the main thing, of course. And of course, at the back, we have the rules that need to take care of generating eventually the postings that need to go back to the general ledger. With the solution, you could use FDMEE for integration. You could manual input, or you could smart view, just the basic stuff that an HFM user might already have in place. IFRS 16 needs calculations in terms of net present value, and that needs to be done each and every period. So we need another period dimension in a custom dimension. So basically, this is all part of the data model on top of the standard data model, which allows us to be very flexible in where data comes from, but also ways to configure and parameterize the calculations. Of course, we need to have in the contracts, payment plans, also flows, the movements, or different kinds of reasons why changes take place, or payments, payment rules, payment calculations, changes on the payments that are being calculated could come from different sources. And in the data sources, we also have the eliminations that we can identify there, and different types of assets. We could distinguish those as well in a custom dimension. What I've chose to do is to show a couple of screenshots to show you what we have and what we do. There's a task list for the parameters, the currency rates, and to go to the whole flow. There's the lease input. So you would start with making sure that all changes have been logged for all the contracts. It could be new contracts, it could be changes on contracts, it could be changes on payment plans, and eventually there are the postings. And as a third step, a review of all the contracts and the postings in different ways by choosing different dimensions on the different axes, and different layers, different choices in the point of view in the custom dimensions. Easiest way to show the details on how to input a lease contract is a form, a web form. Of course, it is possible to load all in one go and then only do the changes in a manual way, and especially when you have a lot of contracts, that's the way to go forward. Especially when it comes from a lot of different sources, it might be a lot of work, but still, when it's about thousands and thousands of contracts, doing it automatically the first way would be the best thing to do. Contract information, the upper left part, the white part of the so that's right above the off-white cells, and on the left of the green cells. The white cells are for text, and that's only for information, and that's not being used for the calculations, as text might be very difficult to maintain the quality and the formatting. So we only use other fields, data fields, number fields to trigger all the calculations. Here I'm showing a lot more fields that are needed for the calculations. I will quickly go back a little bit. What we see here in the columns is a rule 1 and a rule 2 and a rule 3 and a rule 4. We could have more, we could have less. It depends on what's needed, but those rules are payment rules. So when in the course of the contract for the future, the payment rules change, you could have different rules for certain months during a year or for a certain amount of years. And for those rules, we can log the start and end period. We could extend the contract. Or we could even, and that's on the bottom, we could have entering payments on an extra form manually instead of having the system calculating the payments. I already mentioned a lease change or an extension. It's easy to make those changes. Of course, when it would be bulk, it would be better to load, but some changes might be small and could be done in form. What we see here on top of the first column, we see a label and a description. It starts with, it's right below input contract info, Airbus A330 times 10. That's a predefined in a metadata lease contract. For now, we have experienced that quite some clients with a limited number of contracts decide to predefine a contract in a metadata, and especially with long-term assets and with a relatively low amount of changes. That's easy to maintain here, where you would have hundreds and hundreds of changes and new contracts. There might be another way to maintain the metadata or to deal with the metadata, and that could be handled with FDMEE, but it depends on the way a client wishes to use the system and wishes to maintain all the details of the contract in the system. After the calculations have run, I can see that the numbers are relatively small that are showing in the green cells, but those are not that relevant. The thing is, from the calculations or from the manual input, there will be a payment plan, and from the payment plan and the other info, eventually interest, depreciation, and the net effect for the future periods is being calculated. So all the effects, basically for each and every period, each and every combination of year and period, the posting for the balance sheet and the P&L is being calculated. And eventually the total of all those postings, those will eventually go to the general ledger. There are different ways to this is to show that it is easy, and that would count for most systems, that you would have a number of ways to filter and to look at all the results of the calculations and to see, well, either to check or to verify what's happening where for which and what contract. Eventually, the total of all postings would show in a form like this, and it could be either way sent back to your ledger or to any other system by a script that would generate a journal, or it could be done by using SmartView. It might even be done with FDM EE to send information back to another target system. Also, what we see on top, on the screenshot just behind the big one, we see different columns. And those columns show local GAAP, IAS 17, order posted, reclassification, manual input. We have all configured different sources where the postings come from. So we could, within one period that is showing on the first front screenshot, the totals, we could also distinguish between what has been manual input and what has been a calculation coming from the system. That's what we see here again. Postings to local GAAP, IAS 17, IFRS adjustment, reclassifications. And what we could also have in here is eliminations when they are relevant. Contracts, of course, can be loaded with an intercompany member, which would be eliminated when the consolidation would run. What we have done with the accelerator is sold it to 5 clients at the moment. There are 2 in a pipeline, and I'm quite sure that this is still the beginning. What we offer is initial investment, an installation of 2 days, and implementation would generally take 12 to 20 days. And additional time would be needed. And as I mentioned, that's mostly, in most cases, the biggest part of an implementation, irrelevant for the tool you choose, would be integration with source systems and getting all your contracts in the first time. I guess that would leave round up the story that I've got to tell. I'm quite sure there are questions.
Yes, Peter, thanks for your presentation. Actually, yes, we have a couple of questions that have come in here. From first, we have a delegate, or a participant rather, from the UK. Peter, I'm going to read his question. It's quite long, so
okay.
Yeah, it's like this. I'm not sure I'm understanding this correctly. Am I correct in saying that this tool will 1, hold the lease data, 2, perform all the IFRS 16 calculations, and 3, post this directly into HFM? If so, how would this tool interface with your local ledgers when you have local statutory accounts that also need to report under IFRS 16? He also says that they have more than one ERP system.
Yeah. Good question. Well, for point 1, 2, and 3, yes, it will hold all the lease details. It will do the calculations. It will, as a result, generate the values for the postings itself. And then the question is how to get it back to the general ledger. And I think that would depend on the ERP system, and that would depend on the way you would want to automate the postings to be pushed back to the ledger or to any other system. And yeah, so it could be done with FDME, or it could be done with another tool. We have not yet automated this part yet, and we are investigating it at the clients we are working with right now.
Okay, so Alistair, if you are satisfied with the reply, and if you understand, please give me a note on the chat. Otherwise, you can just come with a follow-up question. Next question, Peter, is also from the UK, I believe. Would this application work where you already have a large application, 160 gigabytes and thousands of leases?
So the question is whether this application would work with a big number of leases.
That's what I think. Yeah, that's how I understand the question. Is that right, Anne? You brought the question. Please complete the question. Yeah, Peter.
I could start answering the question. Right now, we are dealing with clients that have 5 to 10,000 contracts. We have not. We are in a process of trying to test with a lot more, but right now we can say 5 to 10,000 is not a problem, and we are not sure yet if it would work as smoothly as it works now, when you would go to, let's say, 50,000 or 100,000 contracts, which are numbers that are not strange for big companies. So at this moment, I might not be able to answer that question very confidently. No, we need to test.
Okay. So Anne, she completes her question saying that yes, and also the application is already very large. That's what she says.
Well, I think when you look at an application that is already there and you would implement this accelerator, you might choose to keep a separate application. I would think that I would never combine this within the already running consolidation application, but keep it separately, and then move data from one application to another application.
Okay. So the last question, Peter, both Alistair and Anne says thank you for your replies. The last question then. So you started off by mentioning different solutions. So what do you think, in your view, what's the big advantage of using Oracle HMS as the solution for IFRS 16?
Biggest advantage is that when you're already using HFM, it would save you probably license cost. You already have the system is already there, and you only have to build your application, and you don't and especially when you use an accelerator, you don't start from scratch, and you use your legacy instead of having another vendor in and gaining knowledge for another product and having another vendor to deal with.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. So have you started the implementation at your customers so far? And if so, what are there any questions that you think might be relevant that your customers have posed to you that maybe we can mention here?
Well, a question that I've mentioned it's briefly, especially at the start of the project, when we say, well, it only takes a couple of days to put the accelerator in, and it will take only maybe 150 hours, let's say 20 days to implement, then that's just part of the story. Big part of the story is the quality of the data, and getting all the lease contracts and lease details into one central place, and that might take a multiple of the effort of just implementing an accelerator or the tool within your EPM system.
Okay, thanks a lot, Peter. Thanks for, I think you've done a really good presentation and good answers. So thanks a lot. And so it's time actually to wrap up this webinar. So Peter, if I asked you to do exactly that, a small wrap up about what you've been telling us today, how would that be? What would you tell us? What's the short story here?
Yeah, well, I would say that first of all, different solutions, different clients require different solutions. Don't forget the quality of the data of your lease contracts, because that might take most of the time for an implementation. The diversity of the contracts will also have an influence on how easy the implementation will be. And well, I guess it would be worthwhile, especially when you already have an EPM system, to look at what you have and to look if you can extend your EPM usage to use it for IFRS 16 reporting as well. And of course, then in case of Oracle HFM, our accelerator might be an option to investigate as well.